disappointed, but after I talked to my friend, Representative Surdich, and he said family first, and I agreed with that. But I just would like to offer a couple comments, having heard those, and it gives me no pleasure to be up here in conflict with the people who I consider to be good colleagues and well-intended people. And I think Minnesota is lucky to have the cadre they have here who are trying to serve them and come to an agreement. But there are some things that they're not aware of, I think, that I have just come out in the last couple of days about this expansion proposal. There's about 101,000. That part is correct. There's about 39,000 people in the GAMC part that are covered, which is nice. And I think as a caucus, we've been favoring that. There's about 50,000 or so people that are included in the transitional programs, and I think that we're comfortable with that. There are two parts that you want to be concerned about, and then there's this other group of 19,708 people that are covered, and we'll talk about that. The first part that concerns me is that we're getting $7 for a dollar we spend. Now, there was a few people that have been put in jail for making those kinds of promises, Mr. Madoff, Mr. Petters, and a guy named Ponzi, who make promises they cannot keep. If you remember the special ed challenges we've had in the past, the feds promised to pay all the special ed costs. How's that working? And I think the world has changed. I think when you lose a conservative man like Mr. Bennett in Utah to some people who found him to be unsatisfactory, I think should power change in Washington, and some people who feel as his opponents felt get in charge, I think there's going to be quite a dust-up about the money. And I think that in a country where we're $1.5 trillion in deficit, approaching the problems Greece, Spain, and Portugal have, I think it's unreasonable to expect that money tree is going to keep shaking itself forever. The money that we are going to collect from there comes from the people who are in this state and in this country who have absolutely no money. They have quit buying pizza, they're buying frozen pizza. They don't take out, they buy frozen, or they make a sandwich. They go to less movies, they're much more concerned about their money. I have two businesses, I rent to some people who have small businesses. Their long-term goal is to stay open. And to be here next year and to be in business. So if the money could be guaranteed and just come out of, then that would be wonderful, but I doubt that it's going to be true. The second part is about the expansion group. And there's 19,708 people that come in by the end of 2013. Now, the rules from the old MA change under this new group. The old group had a 30-day residency requirement. GMC had a six-month residency requirement, and there's some asset tests. The new group, and I don't know if this is known, has no asset test and no residency requirement. This could be changed somehow by action in Washington if they would do it, but this is the law that we're operating under. This is a proposal that's in front of us. What that means is a person could move, and so they have to, and I just talked to the commissioner, it says they have to intend to live in Minnesota. Now, I intend to jog every day, but I never quite get around to it, but so a person could show up having moved in from, pick the state where they have lousy health care, and they come here and they intend to make Minnesota their home, and they wear a Twins hat, and they're accepted at the hospital, they're signed up, and they're in. A farmer working in southern Minnesota making $10,000 but actually has some assets in his farm gets nothing from Minnesota. And if he does happen to qualify for Minnesota Care, he has a premium, he has a $10,000 hospital cap, and he has copays. This person who runs in from another state just to get our benefits will not be only 19,708. It'll be 39,708 or 99,708. Of that group until 2014, we're paying 50% of that money. Let's say we like them coming, but do we have money to pay that kind of expansion? And there's no limit on it. And so if we only adopt this in Iowa, Wisconsin, et cetera, do not, and we're better than who wants to live there if they could live in Minnesota anyway, they would come here and be part of our budget. And so the overrun on those people that are underestimated in the expansion will now crowd out even greater the deficits we face. We already cannot give our schools an increase, nursing homes an increase. We're cutting provider rates to make our program even less accessible. And this gives us a challenge. Not to mention there's a $6 billion deficit lurking next year, and the monies that these are going to cost us are going to go against even greater cuts there. The question really is, do we want to serve these people that we don't even know yet, or do we want to try to take care of our schools and the people we do know? Now, the plan in place under the GAMC fix with the CCDS program is not perfect, But thank goodness 4 hospitals have come forward to serve 17,500 people of the people that surround their hospitals to set up a bit of a system. It's a metro system. It's not statewide yet. But I think as the other hospitals statewide in St. Cloud, I just talked to the Cambridge Hospital president yesterday, encouraging him to sign up. As the Cambridge, St. Cloud, and Duluth and other ones decide to sign up, the program can grow. And the money can be improved a bit, I think. But for the first time, we have a system in Minnesota serving people of the JMC category where there's some coordination of care, and it's not just churning the fee-for-service system, as this system would do. Now, I'm not going to get into national politics and all this bill, but the bill itself has no cost containment. It actually increases the desire to churn people through. The new MA. Well, you need some more tests, Mr. Johnson. Under the new CCDS program, where we're managing and coordinating care, there is no incentive to do any extra tests whatsoever. And so, if we're going to contain the budget and help serve people better, we have to contain costs. And what better group to do that than a hospital whose passion is to care for the people it serves? And so that's why I'm excited that 17,500 of the 19,000 some people who live in Hennepin and Anoka County and the GAMC population are able to be served. And some people from Anoka may go down there, I hope. I urged Mercy Hospital to try to do it, and they declined. Maybe they'll try again. And so are we going to change how we do business, or are we going to keep it the same? We cannot keep things as we're doing it. $6 billion, you have no idea looking at the look of my tenants' faces as they say, I'm sorry, I have to close my business. That's happened 3 times in the last year and a half. People who put all their funds in that, trying to make it go some small little shop of some kind, their dream, and it's gone. And so we as a state owe it to them to help them stabilize our spending, make every dollar spent is well spent. And that's the reason I'm not supporting this proposal of the expansion. I care a lot about the general assistance medical care population. I treat them. And I know what they're like. I know how their lives are just challenged. And so right now, if they come in, I'll be treating them for free because I don't get any coverage, but I'll still serve them. And so, and the hospital, just also one detail about this, then I'll stand aside because I was looking for my wife to come and pick me up here. The rates paid under the medical assistance program are below the cost of any provider who serves them. There is no medical assistance provider in the state who can survive on the medical assistance rates only. The nursing homes cannot, the hospitals cannot, clinics cannot. They have to subsidize some cash or other kinds of business. So I'm glad you could hear what I had to say. I'll take a question, then I got to run out the door. If anybody has a question for me. Yeah.
I have a question about, has the residency and asset requirements changed from last year to this year?
Yes, they did. That's part of the new federal changes that happened. That's really a key difference. That's part of the plan. The idea is to get universal coverage, and this was one way to do it. So, thanks.
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, thanks. Your healthcare tutorial is now over. It's better than I can do. Any other questions?
Well, is this an impediment to ending the session?
The idea that at the 11th hour, all of a sudden, our caucus it's a shock that our caucus is opposed to expanding Obamacare, to be the first Midwestern state to expand Obamacare, I think more than anything shows how much the majority hasn't been listening to us all session. We've been pretty clear, the folks up here in our healthcare group. I think Jim explained it a heck of a lot more succinctly and accurately than I've heard all session long. So I don't know why it's a shock now, but we've been very clear on this. The he said, she said game playing or finger pointing, again, as I was driving in today looking at t-ball games and soccer matches and people out mowing their lawn, they don't care who wins or loses or it's your fault or you're to blame. The speaker can't get the job done. The governor's up fishing. Really? That's where we're at? Get your job done. Don't take any more out of the business owners that are Jim's residents. Don't make it harder to do business in the state, and then get your job done on time. Pretty clear, pretty simple. If you were to go watch some of these folks that were out enjoying a beautiful spring day in Minnesota, probably say the exact same thing.
So let's try it again. Does this make it harder to reach a deal in this session?
Well, from our standpoint, we've said all along that we are against the expansion. When it comes to ratifying the unallotments and it comes to the education shift, That's not been a problem. The problem has been where they're permanent or temporary. I would have to say you'd have to ask the other side of the aisle, because this just came up. Earlier this week we had a tax increase on the table. That went down. Now we're back to another object that supposedly is the impediment to the end of session. Let's keep the main thing the main thing. Balance the budget. Don't add to the taxpayers' liability, and then don't make it hard to do business in the state. Get your job done and get out of here.
Representative Dean, you've been in talks with the governor and the Democrats on this issue. Is there any middle ground here, or is it one way or no way?
Well, I think that we've been very open to consistently to provide better care for low-income Minnesotans. We continue to be very supportive of that. We want to find ways to find better care for low-income Minnesotans, and we want to do that moving forward. I think the new thing here is that it's ObamaCare or nowhere, that this is a new impediment, that unless we adopt federal Obamacare, we can't get out of session. And this is for a group of people, the average person out there is looking in and saying, these people already have coverage. Minnesota is a great state because we do cover low-income Minnesotans. We're going to cover them with something else, Obamacare, whatever you want to call it, a federal program. And just because one caucus wants to switch them into a federalized program, that's going to blow up the end of session or to delay things, I think is unnecessary. I think it's unhelpful. I think that we can probably find areas of common ground to provide better care for low-income Minnesotans without federal care or no deal. So I think that's the real impediment, and I think that perhaps Representative Surdich was maybe looking at the other side of the coin a little bit earlier in his comments. And we understand that those things have to happen, but it does make things more difficult. We don't have very much time to find an agreement, but we remain committed to doing so, and will continue to work to do so with all four caucuses.
Does this have to be settled before an overall deal can be reached, probably for Leader Zellers?
Sure. Well, again, when we started these discussions about end of session, what the deal would be, it was to balance the budget. The tax increase came in later on. Now this is coming in. The main thing all along was ratifying or the allotments, the education delay, and then putting in some contingency for the $408. So I think that has been our main goal along. This has just kind of come in the last minute or the last few hours here. So I think the main thing is to balance the budget and get done on time, and let some of the reforms that Representative Dean and Murphy spent a great deal, months of time working on. This GAMC is one of the fix, or the new version, these CCOs, is nation-leading reform. Let's let it work for more than 3 or 4 weeks. Let's let it do what it was intended to do, which is to treat the patient and not the episode.
So is your advice skip this and go on to other budget matters?
That's my advice, but I'm also one of 47, so I can only offer my advice and hope.
And I think we also have to make sure that we're seeing negotiations in good faith. Over the past couple of days, we've seen a group negotiating, and then they bring forward on the House floor something that undermines those negotiations. Then we see, again, the group negotiating, the leaders negotiating, and then we see a bill brought forward on the House floor that undermines those negotiations. And the health care bill was one of those examples. The education bill was another one of those examples. And when you have that type of activity going on, which undermines negotiations, it does not get us moving forward, and instead, in fact, moves us in the wrong direction. On this MA early expansion, just think back on all these zero-interest loans that got people into homes that they can't afford. That's exactly what this is going to do to us as a state. It's going to get us in a position of making promises that we know we can't keep, trying to serve people that we know we can't afford, and bankrupting our state for the long term. And so our caucus has always been very interested in not just solving a budget deficit, but positioning our state for economic recovery in a way that allows us to thrive going forward. And so, when we look at the end of session, the goal should be to end session, but it should be to end session in a way that sets Minnesota up for prosperity going forward.
Representative Broad, where has your caucus moved in the last few days? It seems like the talks have been in the same spot, and you're talking about moving forward in good faith. Where have you guys moved toward? the other positions?
Well, we have always, Brian, we have always brought forward new ideas and new reforms. And if we want to serve more people on health care, we have brought forward a number of ways that we can actually serve people, more people, in a way that makes more sense and in a way that costs less. When you look at the big reforms that were done this year, the activities, the two big bills that were done this year were done when House Republicans were sitting at the table really moving forward the result. The GAMC is a great example of where we actually served people better at a lower cost, and that was when we had caucus members right at the table doing those negotiations. The second bill that we saw get done this year happened because House Republicans were sitting at the table helping with those negotiations, and that's the tax bill. The tax bill which set up the angel investor and the research and development credits for Minnesota. That was a good bill. It moved us forward. And I think it shows that when House Republicans are engaged, when we are brought in a real way to solve problems, we certainly can do that. And I think Representative Dean has been very active in bringing forward new ideas to the table in the last day, last hours, and the last minutes.
So what do you guys want out of the end of session? Just a budget?
Well, like a budget that doesn't bankrupt the state. We'd like a budget that actually has some permanent reductions that allow us to make some strong decisions going forward. And we'd like a budget that has some substantive reform to it so that we are able to actually operate as a state moving forward. The math doesn't work anymore. We cannot continue to operate the way we always have been, plus a little bit more. We've got to start changing substantively, and the permanent cuts are one step in the right direction toward reform.
I would say, Barrett, it was three simple things. You don't ask any more from the taxpayers of the state of Minnesota. You don't make it harder to do business in the state of Minnesota, and you get done on time. Those are the three things that we've asked for all along. We've offered many times. Again, I said this to you guys many times. We've got a set of guidelines in place so the majority party can shut off debate when we offer amendments. To say that we haven't offered solutions or something new here at the session then denies the, move the previous question discussion that we've had here several times. Unfortunately, it's an ugly process, but if you want our ideas, let us offer them, or at least vote on them. It would go back to the state government finance bill. 19 different ideas we were offering. 10 of them weren't even voted on. They're ruled non-germane. The others were voted down. One, the zero-based budgeting, was accepted and dropped in conference committee without even discussion. So it's a little late in the game to say, where's your ideas? What do you want? It's time to get the job done. Balance the budget. Don't do more to harm business or families in Minnesota, and be done by midnight tonight or midnight on Sunday night. All right. Thanks, guys.